Wow. Let me do this, Moses. Doc, before you come on to do your 1-2-1-2, we're going to lead into a couple of things. I'd like to give an overview, and Moses obviously had to bring us up to date on what has transpired. Is that not so, Moses? But Moses, the first thing I want you to do is put this in the video, put it on the screen, so that we can have it ready and we don't have to go fill in your thumbs to find it. Let me give it to you now. Give this to Doc. Doc, this is your copy. It's only 2 minutes and about 30 seconds. This is your copy for the organization. Coffee Shady.
Yeah, no.
The Lone Ranger. Let me do this, try to open up because I know time's not on that side. Give me the time right now so I can project and know where we are.
2:13.
It's 2:13?
Yes.
Well, it's not too bad. 2:13, okay. Brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, please come join us, please. Dr. Dudley, a big welcome to you, my dear. We were expecting you here at the inaugural luncheon that we had the last time, but I know you were so busy. I know. But what it is this. Let me, before we officially get into Dr. Kambon's delivery, Moses has to brief us, and he will introduce himself. You know, he's like the coordinator, founder of the African Youth Improvement Foundation, and they are handling the groundwork on this new concept that we have. This concept that we have, we are manifesting that into a reality on the ground. It comes out of an interview that was done with me on Viasat with Kojo Frempong, Boys. And it came to light that we know the youth are in a precarious situation here in this country, for that matter, throughout Africa. Unemployment, the youth representing over 50% or sometimes 70% of the population. And so the issue that we looked at was we need a ministry of the future because government cannot do everything. And it's most unfortunate that in our society, Ghanaians, we have the mindset psychologically that anything that's going to be done, that we have to go to the government to do it. And you should know, especially those of us who have lived in the diaspora, you can't depend on government to do everything for you. And so what we have here is the ministry of the future is going to take the bull by the horn and organize its own governmental system. And in doing that, we are establishing various sectors, as the government has, to do research and to see the objective is to take control of our resources, which we know right now are controlled by foreigners. That's one of the basic objectives, but it's not as simple as you can just go and take control of them. First of all, you got to know what are the parameters historically that brought about allowing these people to take control of our cocoa, our oil, our diamonds, all of the resources that we have. So the Ministry of the Future, in its inaugural launching, established a department under the umbrella of the Ministry of the Future that will deal with the economic aspect in our relationship with international organizations, donors, private companies, etc. And one of the main focuses was cocoa, I believe, and gold. So Moses will bring you up to date on that. And the other aspect of it was that we know under this Ministry of the Future, as I see it, and I laid out the parameters on the inaugural launching, is that we as African people must be aware of the fact of the divisionary tactics that have caused us to hate each other, that's caused us to be jealous of each other, that's caused all kinds of nonsensical things where if you don't understand it, you need to read Willie Lynch's letter. Because there's Willie Lynch and there's Wilhelmina Lynch. So it's a female aspect as well as a male aspect. And Willie Lynch has done a hell of a job on dividing us. And that's one of the reasons why we find it so difficult right now, is to come together for those reasons. And what I am suggesting, and Moses, I'm telling you this as a matter of record, I brought an official copy for what we need to do, that every participant I would recommend in this particular program get a copy of Willie Lynch and Wilhelmina Lynch letter so they can read it to find out what it is that causes us to be jealous of each other, causes us to have division amongst each other, and causes us not to be able to work together. Because if you don't have the unity of working together, everything we're talking about right now, trying to do, becomes a moot point. So having said that, Moses, I want to put emphasis on the fact that this second meeting here, and maybe with the help of Dr. Kambon, we can sort out a more balanced approach with the different speakers who are coming down the pipeline to speak. And I say that, Moses, and I want to put emphasis on that, because you know the last time, the inaugural luncheon that we had, it was a very nominal task that the various members were due to go out and research. And we are afraid that if we change speakers every month, a lot of that information that they bring in, you know what I mean, could be misunderstood, because there could be a misunderstanding of the continuity of a foundational base of that information to be under one particular center. So it was something that we mentioned the last time, that we would try, or you will, after Dr. Kambon speak, to find out what is the best way forward to do that. I think you understand what I'm saying, because we have the next speaker to come will be Kwesi Pratt, and that would be the 27th of December. So all of this information is coming in from the one we had in October. Now there's going to be information after Dr. Kambon speak coming in November. And so what do you do with that information when you bring up a new speaker with a new concept? You understand what I'm saying? That comes the next month. But that, we all are in the learning stage. You know what I mean? Nothing is cast in stone. So I'm just saying, I want that to be minuted in the notes, that we must find a way to put that in the balance, okay? And so Moses, what I'd like to do before you come up, if I may, put on the 2-minute, 30-second clip. And I think run it right now, Dr. Kambon, if you can, if you have it in your system. Okay. Run that 2-minute, 30-second clip. And that will set the stage, and I'll let Moses come up and speak from there, Moses.
The future for them. 20, don't they mean the children?
Yeah.
Years from now, Will your children be at the forefront of development in this country? Will they be the leaders? Will they be the entrepreneurs? What do you tell them today that will create the future for them 20 years from now? Now, today we are trying to create the future from now. And so, our kids are the future. What do you tell them? What do you live in them? What do you instill in them so they can make an impact in the future? Tell me about entrepreneurship. Are these, apart from science, are these things that can also help us going forward? And how do we incorporate it now, Anis? You know, if we're talking about 20 years from now, how do we open up a ministry? The ministry for 20 years development. If you're talking about going to a hospital, it's horrible to see the number of people. Why don't we have preventive medical care? An ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure. That's what I told you. Do you understand what I'm saying? And I'm saying we are geared to deal with problems when they happen. Let's try to establish a ministry for the next 20 years to say this is going to be the ministry for the 20-year development. And it's going to be devoted, a sector of it, to the youth. This will be the agenda. I'm telling you, within that ministry, and we will operate it to the letter. But I'm saying the way things are going up right now, you understand what I'm saying? We're just, how can I say, hand to pocket. You understand what I'm saying? Borrowing 65% donor recipient. You understand what I'm saying? Why do we not sit down like South Korea did 50 years ago and said 25 years from now, I'm going to have 15,000 chemical engineers because the country is going to need them. Dr. Malone, why don't we have that? I love this. Now, why don't we have that? Actually, I'm thinking about it right now. The ministry of the future. Yeah. And who is the minister? Say, Total Afrikan, the minister of the future. This is an incredible thought. So that the entire country is thinking, what are we going to do in the future? What does the ministry present for the future? And that ministry has priority and it's directed for a budget so that we can create them. This is so lovely. Thank you, Dr. Mulana. And thank you, Anis. Thank you for coming into the studio.
All right, that's it. Moses, I'd like to inform everybody that while you're making your presentation, if I happen to get up earlier, it's because I'm trying to rush out to Kaswa. But I will stay here as long as I can. Moses, the floor is yours, my brother. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Malani. Almost, I welcome you all to today's meeting. This is the second of our monthly meetings. The first was in October, and it featured Dr. Mulana as our resource person. Today's meeting features Dr. Obadele Kambon. He is our resource person, and he will be speaking on this topic. But last month when we met Dr. Mulana, I would like to give a recap of what ensued when we met the last.
Yes, hello.
Hold on 1 second.
Inaugural launching of Ministry of the Future. Think towards a futuristic development of Ghana to lead Africa as started by Osajifo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, founder. The meeting was on 25th of October 2015 here at the Institute of African Studies. It started at 2 p.m. It featured Dr. Ahmed Milana, and he touched on the topic Ghananization and Africanization of the body, mind, spirit, soul, and all Africa's natural resources. The meeting started with a documentary highlighting the independence of Ghana. Then another documentary highlighting the construction of the Akosombo Dam. The third documentary had to do with Dr. Mulana's interview with Kojo Frimpong on Boys TV program, which Dr. Mulana highlighted what the Ministry of the Future is all about. Dr. Mulana advised that the members of this meeting must focus on what we can do for Ghana or Africa, and not what Ghana or Africa can do for us. 3 ministries were formed to realize the aims of the Ministry of the Future. Economic Ministry, the mission, to advocate for Ghana or Africa's control of their own resources. The objectives of this ministry is to investigate how cocoa prices are set and the advantages or disadvantages it has on Ghana or Africa's economy. Secondly, to investigate international cartel companies setting prices in Ghana and on Ghanaian products and their effect on Ghana or Africa's economy. Resources include oil, gold, timber, diamond, etc. And thirdly, to investigate on how Ghana or Africa can change the order where foreigners control Ghana or Africa's resources. The second was the Ministry of Religion, that is ethics, morality, and spirituality. The mission of this ministry will be to address corruption, which has reached the depth center of our behavior through knowledge and practice of African spirituality. The objectives of this ministry is to provide evidence on where religion began and to right the wrongs of the white God or Christ concept of religion. The third Ministry of Education and Cultural Heritage has among its objectives to 1. Investigate on the origins of education and culture, to advocate for an African-centered educational system, and to advocate for a government policy or recommendation that demands a quota or percentage of shopping malls be devoted to African Cultural Foundation or heritage. The criteria for the research is to investigate on 1. the origin or the historical point of view. Researchers must investigate the historical antecedents of the issue they are dealing with. Contemporary execution of the order. Researchers will investigate on how identified issues are administered in contemporary times. Recommendations of researchers. Give recommendations that can help Ghana or Africa achieve their self-reliance and ultimate control of their resources. Please note, to enhance efficiency of the ministries, subsequent resource person shall follow from where the previous resource person left off. So resource person shall task ministries with monthly responsibilities to broaden the scope of their research and its impact. These are the minutes of the previous meeting, and we had about 20. There were about 20 of us in attendance. Fortunately, the majority of us are not here, but we are still expecting them to be here. So, continuing from where we left off, Dr. Kambon's topic today is about ReAfrikanization and Dewhitenization. And last month, as we touched on Ghananization and Africanization of the body, actually the ministries were expected, the representative of the various ministries were expected here to come out with what their research findings were over the month. But once we had discussion, it was advised that, or it was resolved that they be given a little more time to put their work together. So maybe and Dr. Mulana also advised that we put together a newsletter. So whilst we are unable to put together a newsletter for the first month, we hope we can compile the October, what we had in the October month and today's, what we are going to have today, and come out with a newsletter for both programs. Having said that, I will leave the floor for Dr. Kambon to take over today's subject. Thank you.
Okay. First, I'd like to thank Dr. Maulana for even conceiving of the idea of the Ministry of the Future. Oftentimes, we get started off dealing with these abstract concepts such as African liberation, such as being free, all these things. And many times one critique that comes up is that there's not a behavioral relationship, there's not a behavioral correlate to the things that we say that we want to do. And I actually wasn't here for the first one because I was in Nigeria last month. But I see that it's a very similar topic, Ghanaianization and Africanization of the body, mind, spirit, soul, and all of Africa's natural resources. That today we're going to be dealing with ReAfrikanization and Dewhitenization. And what we want to do is we want to break those down. I had my father on the call. Baba Kama, are you there? I think you may have dropped him. Basically what I wanted him to do, and we'll be able to get him on. My father's name is Dr. Obadele Kambon. And basically what we'll be working through today is working through a theoretical and conceptual framework that he developed, a paradigm, or a Kambon, as it's called. And basically what it is a way of looking at everything that we do, every thought, every word, every action that we do, in order to see whether this is something that furthers African liberation or whether it's something that goes against African liberation. For those who are on the line, if you can mute your microphones. And we'll also have the input for the people who are online as well. We have some people who are Skyping in, so I'm sharing my screen so they can see what's going on the screen, just as we can see here. But again, what this is a paradigm so that every single thought, word, and deed can be categorized in order to see if this is something that is useful for African liberation or whether it's something that's detrimental for it. And the way that it's set up is slightly different from the one that my father developed, but at the top you see is the warrior ancestors. And the reason why everyone should have a sheet of paper here, and if you don't, you can get one. But it's set up in such a way that you can do this for yourself. What you see here on the screen, I want you to start marking it out yourself. So the how.
You know, I think there's something more deeper involved in this, and it has to do with the universal concept of the solar god, the sun.
That's right.
And it has to do with the physiological structure of the black race being endowed with melanin. We are endowed with a chemical substance, a neuropeptide chemical substance that absorbs light, sound, and vibration, meaning that the source of our energy in this universe is not predicated upon a man, S-O-N. It is predicated upon the power of the Son of God, S-U-N. And the Europeans know that. That's why they had the Conference of Nicaea, is to make the transformation of the S-U-N, which empowered us. The pyramids that were built, they were built on a cosmological understanding of the universe as it is in the heavens. All things are bound on earth. And even Christ said that. What is bound on earth is bound in heaven. Meaning that our source of God is not a man figure. It is the sun. And the Europeans know that perfectly well because they know that the radiation from the sun, that they cannot withstand it. The only people on the planet that can look the Son of God in the face without being damaged is the black race. And so what I'm saying, I'm not saying sun worshipers. Our forebears did not worship the sun. They worship the principle behind the sun. And until we can make this paradigm shift, in my opinion, and I believe this is absolutely correct, we must go back to the Son of God, S-U-N. And we must, everything in our whole wherewithal of building on earth must be predicated around as an index, the sun. And it tells you in the Bible. If you read Psalms 68, or not 68, what is 84:11? It tells you the sun, S-U-N, is the source that is considered to be the godly source of the universe. So where did we go wrong? We went wrong with the Aryan white race eventually studying the power source that we had before Christ. It was understanding and giving reverence to the sun. They studied us because only people with pigment skin can relate to the power of the sun. And the sun, you know, I mean, just to simplify my point.
And
Do you know
Kambon, just so we can get the input from more people.
Yeah, it takes 1 billion barrels of crude oil, you know, to cover 1 kilometer, to make 1 kilometer of energy. 1 billion barrels. And if you look at the energy source coming from the sun, you understand what I'm saying? I mean, it's tremendously infinitesimal past that particular figure. And all I'm trying to say is that we have been duped, we have been bamboozled, we have been hoodwinked. We must now look at the energy source of the sun, and that is the center of the power of this universe. And black people are related, as the Greeks called us. We are children, Ethiop. Ethiop does not mean Ethiopia, Addis Ababa. Ethiop is generic for black, burnt skin, children of the sun. And it tells you there that we are children of the sun. And until we can relate back to the power of the sun, I think we're just dealing, it's a nebulous point to even talk about trying to get a black Christ.
Okay, let's come in.
Yes. On the dewhitenization, on the health food, I think for some time now, since I got to know Dr. Malana, the couple with my family tradition, in terms of food, we eat.
Yeah, hold on one second, let this brother's talking right now.
Yeah, we eat our food, what we eat, we consume in the house is mostly African. Yeah, we don't try to jealous the other people who eat Western foods, because now to have come to find out that even the money that we eat, its health benefits is enormous. It increases the bacteria and enzymes in our gut. But from people who have gone to neo-colonial educational system, and that's the effect of neo-colonial education, you come out and you reject whatever your ancestors were doing without you investigating. They will just condemn everything outright. That shows that, and in their demeanor, they will tell you that that was wrong, when they've not even investigated into their food system. They condemn everything totally. And I'm much conscious of the health in terms of some of our local food, the root tubers like the contaminated tuber. Cocoyam contaminated. If you get the match organic one, it has an aphrodisiac property in it, because once you are able to empty your bowels, it's better. You get, there are a lot of benefit in it in terms of applying. And whilst growing up to, that was the food we found at Atomic Energy. We have 4 acres of maize and pepper. So whilst growing up, that was the food we eat. Apply in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening. Yeah. So and it's helped me in terms of my consciousness, economic wise. I know how to manage food. Yeah, the only thing is the others that I'm dependent on. Hopefully, if I get job, I'll just win away myself and be doing my own sort of thing. Though I do my own sobolo, my own the local malt drink, asana. Yeah, I think that is the way forward. And I don't want to have a kid that for every 3 days they will be injecting that kid with insulin. Yeah, and that's what I think for the future is.
This is good. Now, this is Dr. Kambon. This is my father. We'll come back here. But he said he wanted to have a comment. And actually, everything that we're working on today is actually his idea. So, Baba, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, you can go ahead. We can hear you.
Thank you very much. That was a very brilliant presentation. On the paradigm, when you look at economics, on the top, right next to it, should be, and I'm included environment and resources.
Right.
And I don't know if you have that on yours.
Yes, there.
We have to consider, is there, okay, consider the environment, how we treat the water, including water, and how we use or misuse resources. And then over on religion, I've added, I don't know if you have here, ISM coming down.
Yes, there.
Okay, that's idol, symbols, and mythology. And at the end, we've added, or on the top, next to diversion, or next to political, is MST. That's matter, space, and time. And the white dominators control matter, space, and time. And under that is they control mathematics, science, and technology. And all these are used as weapons against African people.
Okay, do we get that? Okay.
So, yeah, matter, space, and time, mathematics, science, and over. And under that is mathematics, science, and technology. For example, the research says that if you put a cell phone, you should limit your use of a cell phone to 2.5 minutes per week next to your head, next to your ear, because the radiation is so intense. Those that use cell phone all the time next to their ear will be the next victims of brain cancer. So that's what the science is. And the white dominators trick us into self-suicide. For example, in the U.S., around this time of year, they will tell you, don't drink and drive. So what implicitly they're saying is okay to drink, but drink and drive. But the research says that one drink of alcohol, a small shot glass of alcohol, kills 1 million brain cells and 1 million liver cells. So those are my comments. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And we should also thank him for giving us a paradigm. So this is, very good information, and it's very profound in the sense of what it causes us to do is to look at all of ourselves on an individual level, and this is what I would like for us to do. And also, as people are coming with their contributions, this is what I would like for people to do to focus them. I would like for you to say in your own life what you would like to reAfrikanize and what you would like to dewhitenize. Now, the reason for the grandsesters and the current Africans here is so that you can have a paradigm of what you would like to get to, right? An archetype, a prototype. This is somebody who excelled in this specific area, right? So it's not just, amorphous, we don't know where we're going, that here is somebody who excelled in history. Now, they may not have had it all together in health, but what we're trying to do isn't necessarily copy what those people who went before did. We're trying to, as all of us as individuals, trying to get all of our different selves in order. We don't want to know every single historical fact about every African person, but then we're out, on Black Friday shopping at Walmart or whatever it is, right? What sense does that make? So basically what this also attempts to do is lessen contradictions, right, in ourselves. So as people are coming with their contributions, what I would like for you to do and try to focus it if possible, what you would like to do to reAfrikanize, what you would like to do to dewhitenize, and we'll focus on those. After that, what I would like for us to do to keep things moving is I want for people, if you have them, to give examples of warrior grandsesters in any of these areas, people who really excelled in this. It could even be someone in your own family who we may not know on the larger scale, but who was that African who perhaps told you or taught you how to deal with indigenous herbs, right? again, in terms of current Africans, you can give those, but for now, I want us to focus on ReAfrikanization and Dewhitenization on an individual level to take this big theoretical, let's all get free to what am I doing to make myself free? Here and then here.
Thank you very much. I think the question is being posed as though we should address it at the individual level. But frankly speaking, the challenges and the problems that confront Africans through white domination and through other policies and measures of the white supremacy attacks us at the social level. So it is important that we address the questions at the social level, because at individual level, we may be able to overcome one or two things, but at the longer or within the medium term, we will not be able to address it. There are some points that have been raised and I would like to make some input and contributions to them. The first is the issue about the Western theories. Barack Obama is a black man. In fact, one of the most powerful persons in the world until recently. Barack Obama commits atrocities more than any other person on this earth. He commands the military of the United States Army, the Navy, and the Air Force, executing people in Afghanistan, Iraq, in Libya, and so many parts of the world. The ideology that guides and runs the mind of Barack Obama is a Western ideology. Kwame Nkrumah was an African. Kwame Nkrumah picked up the independence struggle. He eventually led and caused the eventual independence of other African states. The body language and the thoughts of Kwame Nkrumah is governed by a certain Western ideology. Nkrumah writes that he's a Marxist. In fact, when you read Amilcar Cabral, Unity and Struggle, he applies Marxist analysis to the class in Guinea-Conakry and in Cape Verde. Kwame Nkrumah applies class struggles in Africa. Karl Marx applies class struggles in the world.
Guinea-Bissau?
And Guinea-Bissau. No, Guinea. Yeah, I mean Amilcar Cabral.
Yeah, Guinea-Bissau.
Yes, Guinea-Bissau. So the point is that it is not necessarily where the theory or the ideology is coming from, but its validity, how it is applicable in society, how scientific it is, the extent to which Lenin applied Marxism in Russia made him successful in achieving a revolution, the extent to which Mao Zedong applied Marxism in China made him to achieve a certain success, the extent to which Fidel and Che Guevara applied Marxism in Cuba was able to achieve a certain success. In the same way, Nkrumah launched an African revolution with an ideology. Eventually, the application of the Marxist universalist principles led to an emergence of a new ideology for the African people, which was described as Nkrumahism. So we need to be very careful of how we reject certain ideologies in the first place. Now, on the issue of what can we dewhitenize within our society, one of the very things we can handle individually is the food we eat. We can choose to go to the market and buy cocoa and buy organic food. But the point is that there is a law. The law compels you to buy GMOs. There's a plant breeders bill which gives the rights, the holder rights to a company to produce a mass quantity to the extent that when you go to the market, you do not get the available options to buy. You only have large variety of GMOs to buy and a few variety of organics to buy. That is the problem that confronts us. So for us to solve the problem, we have to look at it at the social level. How collectively we can work to combat it. How collectively we can work to change the policies that affect us as a group and as a society. The other point I want to talk about is the issue of God. Africans practiced religion before colonialism and slavery. The God factor that existed in the African society did not stop colonialism. It failed in stopping colonialism. In fact, They stole our gold and they still continue to steal our gold. And the God factor is still there. It tells you that the God factor is not the problem. The God factor does not exist. The God factor is an illusion in the first place. And that is what we need to be very clear. The moment we begin to organize ourselves as groups that will begin to reject this God factor, the moment people will also begin to make sense of what we do. Because eventually, the problem that confronts majority of people who go to church are basic concrete problems. Getting access to food is a problem. Getting access to clothing is a problem. Paying school fees is a problem. These are the things that they bow down and pray to God for. And so if we can resolve these problems physically, concretely, materially, then they will stop worshipping the illusion, what is called God. It does not exist in the first place. So for us to bust into such an argument or analysis on it is to lure us into a complex situation where we cannot resolve ourselves. Thank you very much.
Okay. First, I would like to deal with some of these. I'm going. First, in terms of social, oftentimes, again, this is what we're trying to bring to mind here. Oftentimes we talk about we want the whole society to change, but we ourselves haven't done anything in our own lives, right? So we could say, all right, we want all of these people. Imagine if you say God doesn't exist. I want everyone to stop dealing with God, but then you go to church every day, and then you go to mosque on Friday. That means on an individual level, you want everyone to do something that you yourself are not willing to do. So as we're, again, part of this has a social component to it. We talk about areas to reAfrikanize and dewhitenize in the social level, but you yourself on an individual level, there's a proverb and it kind of says, that if a nation is going to be destroyed, it comes from the houses, right? That if a castle is going to fall, it comes from the internal dealings of it. So again, just what are you yourself going to do? You want everyone to become Marxists, not saying you, but let's say you want everyone to become Marxists and you refuse to read any of Marxist books. You want everyone to become Leninists and you refuse to read any of Leninist books, right? So if you're saying that you want all of these things to happen on a social level, and you want all of the social things to change, every single person inside of the society is a part of the society. So again, this comes back to really core philosophical ideas about the human being. I think, therefore I am. You're the subject and everyone else is the object, versus realizing that you too, you're a part of it. So if you change, he changes, then that's where you're actually making the change in the society that you're calling for. But if you're saying all the society, you do this, you stop doing that, and you're not doing it yourself, you're a hypocrite. And I'm not saying you, but I'm saying that that's the whole point of this. So what I would like for people to do is say what you would like to do to reAfrikanize and dewhitenize. We went away from that. Now to come to Marx, right? We're talking about Marxism. Part of what we're talking about is who originates the idea and who benefits from the idea. And the whole point of how it came up is that Marx is never going to come up with a theory that talks about him or the German people being brought to justice for the first Holocaust that they committed in Namibia. You understand? He has no theory that says, and therefore because of what we did in Namibia, this should be done to the German people. There's no ma'at, there's no reciprocity, there's no balance, order, harmony, there's no justice in there, because he's not going to come out with a theory that says you should destroy me. A theory is sort of like a dog, in the sense that my pet dog isn't supposed to come back and attack me. You understand? So again, there are going to be certain ceilings that you'll run up to as long as you're using these European theorists, because the European theorists will always be silent on what to do about them. And the issues that we've had with Eurasians go back for 5,000 and 6,000 years on a small scale. So again, we would be very ahistorical to think that the issues start with Adam Smith, Marx, Lenin. We'd be in a little teeny tiny box when these issues go back for thousands and thousands of years. So again, as we're saying that we are trying to reAfrikanize and dewhitenize, if we don't deal with who originates it, we won't see how they benefit from it. And I'm saying that how all of these Eurasians benefit is that there's no part of it that tells us what to do about them. So as African people, we would say we would need to come up with our own theories and our own ideas that talks about what to do about Eurasians, because Marx isn't going to give it to you. Your enemies are not going to teach you how to be free. So that's that. Also, we talked about God concepts and Barack Obama. I agree that Barack Obama is he's part of the largest criminal organization on the face of the planet. Perhaps 1, 2, or 3 if you want to include the Vatican, the British Crown, and so forth and so on. But again, to come back to this, what we're trying to do is remove ourselves from all of the hypocrisy that we suffer from. We say we want everyone to do this, but we're not doing it ourselves. So if we can just focus on that on an individual level, I think we'll start to see the social change that we're looking for. But if we're saying the whole society should do this, and then you're sitting back, and I'll give you an example, Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad. Has anyone heard of him?
Yeah.
Very powerful figure. And he was trying to get on Morehouse's campus. So he had spoken at my parents' bookstore, and he had me going around to try to get him on the campus of Morehouse College in Atlanta. So we went to an apartment to discuss how we were going to do it. Outside the apartment was Dr. Khalid's big, huge Rolls-Royce limo. You understand? So, and in his last speech, he was talking about, if these Europeans said, I'm going to take my language back, what would you do? And you would have to stop speaking English. They said, okay, well, give me back my computer. All right, give me back my lights. All right, give me back this, give me back the land. What would you do? Again, the point of this is to lessen the hypocrisy in each of us, because all of us have it to the degree we're willing to live with it, but the degree to which we're willing to struggle and get past it, that's where we're going to start seeing the change in society. We had a hand here, and then there, and then there. And if we can, try to focus it, because I know everyone has a lot of good input, but if you can say what you will do to de-whitenize and re-Afrikanize, that will be very helpful for the program. Yeah.
Okay, I think everything goes with spirituality. So our first thing we should be thinking of how we can be spiritually strong through our African way of life. Because for example, in my village, they call something a chango. What they call it is like more like covenant. So in those days, there was no individual like church, groups of people. The whole town belonged to one person. And the priest, the chief priest, when they set the standard of living, like when related to what Olana have said, anything that is binding on earth is binding elsewhere, it's more spiritually. So let's say, for example, they say on this day nobody goes to riverside. It's something that is binding on the whole village. It's not individual, something whereby a person. So it is then that the people will get cursed if they go, or if they want to go above that. But what is happening now is the level of hypocrisy, that is the people that they pretend to be what they are, but physically or spiritually within themselves they are not. That's what exactly the European has brought into this system. So if you want
what will you do to de-whitenize, and what will you do to re-Afrikanize in your own life? On the basis of this?
Yeah, what we have to do now is
not what will you do?
Normally what I have to do as when I become to say when I begin to know His Majesty, Haile Selassie, I begin to understand more of these things, that we being an African doesn't make us evil or doesn't make us to go and seek for salvation, but rather everything was rather within us. So it made me feel more within my African self and realize that I'm not spiritually lost as I was having from the Christian perspective. As if everything that have to be quiet before we can see ourselves as spiritual people. So
what you have done to de-whitenize is you've gotten out of the church type of concept, and you've gone to more of a Haile Selassie
teachings. And also it have a lot, because when you read the book of Mahatma Gandhi, when he was forcing the Indians, he said, don't only have to be religious, but you have to avoid everything that comes from Europe. So even now, many Africans that are not when most people who are westernized, you see that even when somebody becomes a Hindu or something, even the religion that they practice, things have to be brought in from Europe or elsewhere for them. You understand me? So every day I explain to people that it's not about worshipping any other thing, but you have to watch the economic benefit that is given to you. Because even the person who is showing you that he brought Hinduism or anything, Buddhism from elsewhere, he's not going to make you as the master. He always wants you to look outside yourself, to look to him as the overseer of everything. There is no way. So everything we have to do now is how we can also promote ourselves spiritually as an African people. When we need life, for example, if we need to go into Africanized way of life, somebody who wear coat and tie every day see himself as a Christian. You understand me? So even being a Christian doesn't change, because even the Christian, if they want to live according to their Christian law that is given to them, they will live more African. Because when they talk of order of my heart principle and all those things, it was something that was governing the people, which they live in more higher level of understanding, because religion or spirituality, what it was doing to the people is to eliminate them from all kind of forces, like anything that like negative forces that was disturbing the system. So if everybody can realize himself that cause and effect or anything that I do relate back to me, I think it's something which you can even dewhitenize yourself from that perspective. That anything you do have a reaction. That was sort of the first concept of Africanization of the mind.
Okay, is everyone here aware that Mahatma Gandhi was a virulent racist?
Yeah.
Okay, as long as we're starting off with that understanding. Both in South Africa, if you read his writings about what he said about black people. Okay, as long as we start off there. I think these are good points. And again, what I would like people to do is, because oftentimes we say, what everybody can do, I want everyone to do this. I want you to say, I gave examples. I talked about my drawers, that's very personal. So if you yourself can just look internally beyond what you want everyone else to do, so that we can deal with what we ourselves are going to do and have done.
I want to react to some of the issues that are
Yes.
that are raising out of this discussion. There is the issue of
And I think we have to be, before you say something, I think we have to be reflective from an African psychology perspective of our own resistance. Because I've heard Dr. Kambon say many times to just talk about yourself, and we're not willing to do that. And so, you know, change has to come from, like he said, within. Even when you think about if you're not a parent yourself, you have always heard parents have to live by example. And so we want people to change. You yourself have to live by example. So before you say something, think about, instead of addressing the issues, address his challenge of what can you personally do.
in terms of
And what you will notice is people don't like to do that.
Right.
But really quick, but before we continue, what I would like, and this was actually a suggestion from my father, what I would like for people to do is a quick exercise, and I want you to write these things down in the area of things that you, rules for yourself, 1 through 5, number them 1 through 5, in terms of things that you never do and things that you always do. And what should be in the back of your mind is who benefits from what you do and who originates what you do. So oftentimes it came up the plant breeders bill and GMO, right? When they're bringing the GMO crops to us, we could just take them wholeheartedly and say, oh, because they brought it to us, they must have our best interests at heart. Most of us won't be that stupid to do that, because we know if they're bringing it to us, they must get some benefit from it. If they originated these GMOs, they must get some type of benefit, first economically from you buying it, and then once you get sick from it, or your grandchildren have 3 arms and 20 toes, now they are the ones who are going to correct it. Those things tend to be very straightforward. When we see who originates it, we know that they plan on benefiting from it. Sometimes we try to make it more murky when it comes to ideologies, when it comes to religions, when it comes to whatever. We can see the GMO and it's stark. But now we have an ideology we say, oh, well, they brought it to us out of the kindness of their hearts and it's going to save us. Or they brought this religion to us out of the kindness of their hearts and now it's going to save us. The religion is the same as the GMO. The ideology is the same as the GMO. All of it, when they originated, they have their plans of what they want to do with it and how they plan on benefiting from it. So this is your exercise, 1 through 5, rules of what you never do, rules for yourself, personal rules for yourself, of things that you never, or if you haven't thought of this before, then you can create your rules as you go, of things that you never do and things that you always do. The things that you should always do are the things that would help in your reAfrikanization. I always wear this, I always eat this, I always grow this. The things that you never do should be in the area of dewhitenization. Like for me, growing up in South Africa, and y'all work as I'm talking, South Africa, they had the apartheid, we were boycotting. So even as a small child, we knew, all right, don't go to Exxon, don't go to Shell, don't go to this, don't go to that. And even to this day, if my car is about to run out of gas, I'll push it before I go into any of those gas stations. So just for me, it's a personal rule, I never do that, right? Not saying that that's the final destination. The final destination may be saying no fossil fuels, period. Dr. Maulana was talking about return to the sun. We may need to marry that ancient understanding with the technology and go all solar, because we say that would be in alignment with who we are as African people, right? We deal with water deities, so we may need to look at thermal, ocean thermals for generation of electricity.
I just have a question. Maybe you can put it in perspective. We're talking about dewhitenization, reAfrikanization.
Yes.
Have you ever looked out to see whether there was a point in time in history where the black race was wholesome? That all of these things that we're mentioning right now, or trying to get out of, did we have holistically a society that did not have to worry about those things? Have you looked at that?
Yes, I have. Actually, that's the reason why I wasn't here last month, because in Ibadan, African Studies Association of Africa, and this is even why I didn't say Africanization, I'm talking about reAfrikanization, because it's been done before. Yes. And the time where I've seen it been done, the talk that I gave was on the ancient African origins of Pan-Africanism. The ancient African origins of Pan-Africanism. And what this was is that in Kemet, we talk about Kemet as land of the black people, right? And when you look at their original foreign policy, they were always trying to keep out the Eurasians, right? They were blocking them, or if the Eurasians ever got in, they were expelling them with a joint Kemetic and Nubian force. And that was all throughout the Old Kingdom, because they understood that Kemet meant land of the black people. So all of their foreign policy, if you look from the Old Kingdom all the way up to the time around Amos and Jehudi Mes, the expulsion of the Hyksos, they always had this understanding that we are all black people. And it puts a different perspective in terms of the so-called conflicts with the Nubians, because when they had conflicts, they were always incorporating the Africans from further into the south. So they would have a Pan-African force. So what I'm saying is that that was where we had the first understanding of who we are and who our enemies are. And I think that if we can go back to that ancient understanding of who we were as African people in terms of Ma'at and all these things, then we can reAfrikanize.
Well, this is precisely my question. If we knew who we were in ancient times, and we were holistically one, and we're asking, pertaining to the question that you put on the table right now, you want to know what you will do.
Yeah.
Then what was it that we did wrong?
Jehudi Mes.
No, what was it?
I'm telling you, Jehudi Mes made a decision to allow Eurasians in, and that was the beginning of the destruction of African civilization. He allowed these
what psychological, how did he get to that psychological mindset?
It was a few steps, because Amos first expelled the Hyksos, and then we did a punitive campaign that went into Eurasia.
Before expelling, before they even got in, what was the initiation? Where did this negative thought initiate? Did it come from one individual? Was it permeated within the African society? Was it a unilateral decision by one person, or had we become decadent in our behavior, that we came to a point of deterioration, morally, spiritually?
No, I don't think so. And I think that this goes to basically an idea of an original sin type of theory, where we're to blame for whatever happened to us because we did blah, blah, blah. And therefore, and I don't think that that's the case at all.
Well, the reason I ask that is, how could we be a society, Doc, and we were wholesome as one? We were people, God's first choice. And then how could we allow these so-called Hyksos or Asians, Euro-Asians to come in?
Right.
Something within the society, in my opinion, had to go wrong.
This is what I'm explaining. That all throughout the Old Kingdom, Middle Kingdom, we always had a policy, keep the Eurasians out. Keep the Eurasians out throughout that. And again, it came from the foundational understanding that Kemet is land of the black people. Now you have these Eurasians who finally forced their way in, right? That's the Hyksos. We did what we always did, which was we expelled them as soon as we had the opportunity to do so. Now, the descendant of Amos who did the expulsion was Dewhitenizing, so-called Tutmos III, right? Now, he took it even further. He took the war to them and extended into southwestern Asia. But he did what we did with other African people, which is that if we conquer other African people, we allow the princes to come in. You can even look at the Asante Hene going to Dinshira's court. All throughout Africa, that was the policy that we did. We attempted to use that same policy that we did internal to ourselves with our implacable foe and our enemy and our predator, that we allowed princes to come in, we allowed princesses to come in, and we married them in. This was the mistake, is that you can't do with your enemy what you do with yourselves. So with Nubians, these weren't our enemies, this was ourselves. So if we defeat them, we incorporate them in, we bring them in. We never did that with Eurasians because we understood that at a core level, there are irreconcilable differences at the genetic level, that they want to ensure that their descendants will exist, and we want to ensure that our descendants will exist. And those two are things that don't come together, because they have to make sure that theirs exist, and we have to make sure that ours exists. What we did, and this is answering your question directly, we started to allow them to come in. And just 2 weeks ago, no, I want to say about 3 weeks ago, a study came out that said that continental Africans, sub-Saharan quote-unquote continental Africans, have Eurasian DNA. And it was documented because they found DNA from an ancient African in Ethiopia, and they showed the changes from that time that was unmixed to what it is now. And populations that were even thought to have been unmixed have some percentage of Eurasian DNA. They said that it came around 3,000 years ago, which is around the time that Dewhitenizing opened the floodgates and allowed the Eurasians to come in from the first time. And that also led to us fleeing from the Nile Valley and all of these other things that we've seen. So this is what it is. And again, I think that we can fall into a trap if we try to go into this original sin thing that, oh, well, we were doing wrong, and therefore this is a divine punishment for us doing wrong. What is actually going on is that we've had an incursion against us, right? That's the first wrong. So now the reciprocity comes when we do something about it and bring justice and restore that.
So my question is this, because this falls within the same context of talking about the boogeyman. You mean, as we were a people holistically sound, where did these Euro-Asians, the bad people, come from? And why did it have to happen at that particular time? We are the oldest people on the planet Earth.
Yeah.
And God knows how many hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of years that we existed. Why all of a sudden, at that particular time, that this had to eclipse with the boogeyman coming?
I don't think this is a boogeyman. If you want to understand where Eurasians come from, and one of the main traits that they have is their lack of melanin, right? You also need to look at where polar bears come from, where Arctic rabbits come from, where Arctic owls come from. All of them are devoid of melanin, because in a snowy environment, there is a selective advantage to being white against white. If you're a black bear and you're trying to sneak up on your prey, and you're jet black, they will see you coming a mile away. But the genetic mutation that allowed one to be white, those are the ones that are going to thrive in an all-white environment that you had in the worm glaciation period.
Yeah, but my question was this: why all of a sudden?
This is where I'm coming.
At this particular time that happened.
This is where I'm coming to, and I'm saying that first. Your first question was, where did they come from?
Yes.
And I'm saying that once you understand where all of those white creatures come from, then you will understand their selective adaptation to that type of environment. Now, in terms of us, as long as we kept that understanding that Kemet means land of black people, we don't allow Eurasians, we don't allow Eurasians, we were fine. as soon as we relented on that, and again, there's a book called The Destruction of Black Civilization by Chancellor Williams, where he basically goes into this exact thing. People say, oh, well, if we were so, on it, what happened? How did we fall? That's his exact conclusion, that as soon as we lost that understanding that this is land of the blacks, we don't allow Eurasians in, that was the beginning of the destruction of our civilization. So from Dewhitenizing opening the floodgates and allowing them to come in by treating our implacable foe as though they were human beings, that is what opened the floodgates. That's what allowed Eurasian DNA to saturate into Africa as it is now. At that point in time, as soon as you lose the understanding that these are your enemies, that's what happens to you. And it's case studies time and time again of every single time you do that, we have the same example, we have the exact same thing that happens.
All right. I hear what you say. I won't take it any further because I will tie up the time. But I will say this before closing. It is my understanding that this Euro-Asian that we're talking about, the Aryan white race, that the DNA of them shows that they come out of the black race. And I find it very difficult to believe that we as a people existed in tranquility and harmony for hundreds of thousands of years. And then all of a sudden, at a certain period of time, it eclipsed. The boogeyman, or these bad people, were able enough to penetrate our society. I think what my understanding is, I'm not saying the blame game, but we got issues ourselves. Like the ultimate jihad is within man himself, within you. So we have some issues within ourselves that we have to deal with in terms of behavior.
And I'm saying the main issue that we have is not treating our enemy as our enemy and not recognizing our enemy. That is the war that you
But then we also have such a mindset to have resentment against our own brother and sister. These factionalisms exist within the black race. And I would say it goes back to time immemorial. And
I think this is what Kemet was attempting to get over, because in Nubia you had Jet Nubians, you had Majay Nubians, you had 1,000 different types of Nubians, right? But Kemet meant land of the black people. That means that whatever type of ethnicity you are coming with from interior to Africa, you have to strip all of that away and you have to just become black.
Well, let me ask you this. Can it go beyond? I'm not just talking about color or race. I'm talking about spirit. Man was spirit before flesh. And I'm saying that this is a spiritual illness that is within man. Man resenting man, man resenting man, woman resenting woman, or tribe resenting tribe. Did these things exist? According to my understanding, the explosion was an implosion, not an explosion. That we imploded within, and our society began to come down. And when that began to happen, it gave impotence to this mutation or this mutant that you're talking about. And in fact, this mutant comes out of us. It just didn't come abracadabra on the earth, just like albinos. They don't just come, they come out of the black race. And so what was our psychological behavioral status at that time? And you can see now in all black societies, we're not talking about color, we're talking about spirit. We can all be around here as black people, but you got some negativity coming from one side that may not be aligned with the other side. So let's talk about spirit of the black people rather than talk about color. Could there have been this satanic spirit somewhere within our family that began to nurture and augment to a level to bring about an implosion within?
I think even to go into satanic, just like we talked about God before, we have to go into a Eurasian worldview to even deal with it. We have to deal with diametric opposites. One thing is all good, the other thing is all evil, blah, blah, blah. And I think that we'll be going off, the deep end if we do that, and I wouldn't recommend doing that. But what I will say is that the time where we attempted to overcome all these divisions was in Kemet, by saying whatever your ethnic divisions were prior to that, now you are black. And you are fighting against this Eurasian incursion, right? So I think that if we want to see how to deal with the Eurasian incursion, we have to look at what we did to deal with the Eurasian incursion in the past. And then we have to look at what happened when we abandoned that. Because the whole point of history is to see the patterns, to see what happened the last 1,000 times that we did this. Then we don't have to just deal with these abstract theories and I think this could work and I think that could work. We can actually have documentation of what happened when we did this, what happened when we did that. And once we come to an understanding of that, then we can say, well, we don't need to let these Eurasians in. I think that's the key part that we did, and I think that's what we're doing right now. And I think that what we did to overcome that is we said we're all black and we are against these Eurasians who don't have our interests at heart. And I think that that's what we're going to have to get to again if we want to, you know, have anything like a future, to even have a ministry of the future. Yeah.
With regards to what I've done to reAfrikanize myself, after school I thought it wise that I love shaving a lot, and by shaving, who benefits? Is the Eurasian who got in the barbering machine that benefits. As he brings in the barbering machine, if I keep shaving, I keep financing his economy. That makes it possible for him to be more powerful than myself, so I resolve not to shave him on that. By not shaving too, I'm able to benefit from the sun that is highly intensive here in Africa. Instead of the earlier period where after shaving I walk under the sun, I have headache. Now I don't have any headache after walking under the sun because I no longer shave. And one thing I've done to dewhitenize myself is I stopped wearing the jeans and the t-shirts and the long sleeves and the ties that I used to wear. I thought one thing is branding. When you wear something, you advertise it. So if I wear something sewn by a local producer, somebody who lives in my neighborhood, my friend sees me and asks, I like this, who sewed it? And if I show him, the local tailor in my community benefits. By this, he's able to feed himself and his family and support his children's education, thereby reducing unemployment situation and the economic burden on government to support education. So this is what personally I've done to reAfrikanize myself and to dewhitenize.
This is what we want. We want success stories of things that you've actually done, tangible things that you've done.
I wanted to share what I've done to dewhitenize myself, and it's in process. And this is my 5th time to Ghana, but this is the first time that I've stayed for a whole year. So I committed to learning Twi. So I'm definitely still in the beginning stages, but I took a whole semester of it and planning to take another semester through class, but also try to engage with people more to practice, because I realized if I just continue to come to Ghana and Africa and eventually repatriate and never choose to speak the language of Mother Africa, then I'm being like a European for myself. So I'm trying to go through that process of learning Twi and to reAfrikanize myself. I will say, in terms of privilege, I realized my privilege in terms of being able to travel. And so, at a younger stage or younger days of my life, I said, oh, I want to go to this place in Europe, this place in Europe, this place in Europe. But I've committed in the last 5 to 7 years in continuing to make parts of Africa to be what I explore, and not Europe, not necessarily Asia either, and try to take it a bit further and also bring students to Ghana. That helps with the economy, but also then helps too with collaborative things to help build and to try to do my part. And finally, I wanted to say quickly, one of the things that struck me that you said that I think I can do differently, that if I can point him out, and I hope this doesn't embarrass him, but kind of what you do, Brother Obadele and Brother Samori, is the idea of living by example. I find with myself and being an African from America, a lot of times I myself get into this process of trying to help my people wake up that are in America. And I'm learning, and I think you all saying this struck me, that I have to balance more and just live my life and be, try to not be a hypocrite. And maybe also do it in ways, and that's why I pointed you out, Samari, as somebody who is repatriating now. He shares on YouTube and Facebook, just like you share things on YouTube and Facebook. And instead of preaching to the people, it is that inspires people. And it lets them see that there's another life, there's another way to live other than America. And so you do it in a way that's not intrusive. Because I can't speak for people, our people in Africa, but I can speak about, with some expertise in terms of experience about Africans in America, that because we're not free, we don't like people, even ourselves, to try to tell us what to do. So it's almost counterproductive, I'm realizing, as I get older, to try to preach to people, and this is what you should do, but rather when you make your own life look like a better alternative, then that helps a little better. So I'm going to try to do that more, be an example instead of preaching.
I think this is the core. I think this is the core of what we're getting at, and I hope everyone is, getting this. Like, we could be like, oh, down with capitalism, and then we just go to Malcolm and buy a T-shirt, right? There's some disconnect there. Now, as long as we know that there's a disconnect and we're trying to get beyond that disconnect, then we're actually going in the right trajectory. So you don't say, oh, the person has a T-shirt on, therefore they're bad. It's like, no, this is a journey, right? And I want to share this very quickly. There's a book that I read called The Wrath of the Ancestors by A.C. Jordan out of South Africa. You wouldn't know he was a continental African by his name. But A.C. Jordan, and in it, it's a novel that basically it's a young man who was in a traditional society, and then he went off to get Western education, right? Now when he comes back with all these new ideas of this would be good. Some of them are actually good ideas, right? But he's really rocking the boat. People are like, oh, you're not respecting the elders, oh, you're this, oh, well, y'all aren't doing. So he goes to see a ruler from a neighboring community, because he's now the ruler that he's come back, right? And the ruler in the neighboring community gives an example of two different people. Now in South Africa, they have a cattle herding culture, right? But it's done in different ways. For one group, they said that the way that they herd is that the herd boy will run out in front of the cattle and will make whistling sounds, and the cattle know to follow behind, right? There's another group of people where the herd boys run behind and they have sticks and they drive the cattle in front. And he was given that as a metaphor, saying, now imagine you go to those cattle that need the one from behind, and now you're running in front. By the time you get to the next hill, you turn around and you're like, where are my cattle at? Well, those weren't the type of cattle that responded to that. Or by the same token, imagine you're around the cattle that need that leading by example in front, and now you're going behind them trying to smack them up, and they don't go anywhere. He's basically saying that one of the ideas of Ma'at is propriety, doing the appropriate thing at the appropriate time. And I think that this is something, and for me, I lean more towards the idea of running in front, show the cattle where to go. Now, some people don't respond to that. Some people do. Some people will be like, how you going to tell me to do something when you're sitting here in the bar drinking vodka right beside me, and now you're saying something? But some people say, oh, he's down with me, therefore I'm going to listen to him. So it requires both types of leadership, but the key point of that is understanding the context and doing the appropriate thing and doing the appropriate thing at the appropriate time. The other point, I'm not on Facebook because of my dewhitenization. And also, when I use YouTube for space, I decided that part of my dewhitenization, I don't socialize with anyone on Eurasian anti-social media. So I will use that space and I embed it on my African site. So I told people, if you want to interact with me about this video, come to my African site, because I'm not saying anything to you. Again, that's a step in the process, right? At some point, if I have my own server farm, then I don't need to upload it even there to use their space. But until then, I would say the next step is I'm not socializing with anyone on these Eurasian sites. So that was just a point of correction. I'm not on Facebook at all. Here.
I met Samori's on Facebook.
Yeah, Samori's on Facebook.
I knew you weren't on Facebook.
Yeah, he's on there.
Our dear friend raised certain issues, and I think we just don't have to leave it off guard. He made a certain point that the goals or our way of lifestyle led us into colonialism, slavery, and
No, please, I didn't say.
Oh,
I didn't say.
no, that's what I'm saying.
What I stated was that before colonialism, we were practicing worshiping God. The principle of some God, as was mentioned, existed. Yet we were colonized. Yet went to slavery. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. I'm not. I think it implies in what, from what I've understood here. I don't think we should just look at it in that way, so that we blame our religion, that our religion led us into it. Our way of life is just like the body and soul. One will not be advanced. The spirit cannot be in advance than the body. Whilst in order for us to live, or the body will be in advance than the spirit. No. It's our state of being at that time that had led us into our current predicament. So, in terms of religion, from my personal view and other experiences that I've had in the last 4 years, before, I used to be very close to my father, and before he died, or when I was a kid, he normally tell you that in Ebe, Kofi, don't think evil about anybody. Tell the truth. Let it be your guiding principles. And when I die, I'll become your God on earth. I'm a Christian. Oh, in the morning, he pours libation. Then I'll say, this thing there, certain things have happened in the last 4 years. And what he said, I'm into it. You understand? I'll go to church, all right. That one is just like a social activity. And I'm not, yes.
Dewhitenizing in the area of social.
Yeah, no. See, where maybe there are places I'm feeling bored, and my friends calls me that, Charlie, they are having fun here. Let's go. I'll go.
Church?
Yeah, dewhitenizing, it also, about religion and all those things, we also have to understand our perspective. You understand? That doesn't mean when I go to the church, I'm going to cry to a white person, or I'm going to use some of the things that have been Europeanized. And if you read this book by Anacalypsis, by Sir Geoffrey Higgins, you notice that there's nothing new that has changed in the last 8,000 years. And in terms of libation, in terms of prayer, it's there. It's like it rekindles itself in its own system. So maybe it will, when we are talking about Christianity, religion thing, we will just have to have a broader discussion about some of the things that it has been Europeanized. Fine, the image has been Europeanized. But when you mention about St. Francis of Assisi, the patron god of Austria and Germany, they are all blacks.
You gotta de-whitenize that, man.
Is it?
You gotta de-whitenize that whole situation.
Yeah, I know for a fact that they are all blacks. How they are called saints. 2,000 years ago, they will be called saints. Currently, we call them ancestors. The method that they will use to be classified as saints in the traditional African religion, or those who believe in ancestral religion, that's the same classification that we use as saints. The way I'll call St. Francis of Assisi, you pour libation and cool, that's the same way they will respond.
Just really quick so that we can stay on the program.
Then, on the organic and
just really
organic
quick,
and natural.
we're gonna come back to you.
Okay.
just so that we can stay on the program, what I would like for us to focus on is, again, things that you've done to dewhitenize and reAfrikanize. There's a lecture by Amos Wilson. You wouldn't know he was African by his name, but he deals with psychology. And one of the things that he talks about is spirit possession. And what he talks about is that at this point in time, we have something like a little white man inside of us. To the degree, it's sort of like if you have someone with multiple personality syndrome. There's a certain personality that may come to the surface, and then when it decides to eat, there are things that feed it, things that it wants. It says, I want to do this, I want to wear this. It may be entirely different from what you yourself would like to do, but it does things that help it as a spirit, as a personality that's inside of it. When we look at this same type of thing, and it's even to the point where it's physiological, where there's a person who would get hives anytime he ate things like oranges, right? But when this personality ate oranges, there's no physiological reaction. This is sort of like what we're talking about in terms of dewhitenization, that inside of us has been implanted a little white man. There's a proverb in Chi that says, when a person dies, his or her tongue doesn't rot. They live on through the words that are still inside of us. So some of us have Shakespeare living inside of us. Some of us have Constantine, Napoleon, Marx, Lenin, Adam Smith, Machiavelli, Plato. We have all these white spirits that are inside of us that are trying to feed themselves. And oftentimes when we start talking about dewhitenization, you get a knee-jerk reaction where this spirit will do what is necessary to protect itself. It says, oh no, if you start to dewhitenize, you're going to get rid of me. So it will try to do all these different things to protect itself. The reason why I bring this up is because I want us to come back to the need for dewhitenization. He talks about in terms of economics, where he says, how come everything that, there used to be a song called My Prerogative by Bobby Brown. He said, I do what I want to do, I see what I want to see, I eat what I want to eat. Basically, how come everything that we want to do enriches our enemies? Everyone says, oh, I just want me, myself, nobody else, me, I just want to wear Air Jordan shoes. Well, what was in your environment, on your TV, on the billboards that made this spirit that's been implanted inside of you want to do these things? So once we realize that we have this little white man inside of us, now we have to start talking about how do we starve this white man out in order to do this. Really, I'll come to you, Dr. Marlon, I see your hand. There's a movie called Imitai by Ousmane Sembène out of Senegal. And in it, he talks about the situation as people are being conscripted forcibly for World War I, and the people don't want to go, so they're going to their own deities in order to ask, protect us from these French. They're coming to kill us, they're trying to conscript us, and the deities don't come. So they say, oh, maybe we just need to throw these away. If they're not going to help us, then we just need to throw these away. I think part of this comes to when we're talking about being African. Being African isn't your village. You understand? Let's say that the deities in your village are worthless. I don't know that, but let's say that that's the case. But if you are African and you have the entire continent or the entire African world to work with, your Ewe, let's say that you say, I'm going to learn about spirituality in perhaps Angola. These people were able to defeat the Portuguese over the course of several hundred years. Let me see what they had in there. And I think that this is oftentimes something that happens with Africans or the diaspora, is that we go running back to fragments, some of the same fragments that got us where we are. And instead of doing that, I think we have a very unique perspective where we can say, let's see what was useful amongst the Ewe. Okay, Trokosi wasn't useful. Let's see what was useful amongst the Dogon. Let's see what's useful amongst the Bakongo. And see, once we're African, then we know all of that is ours. And then we can see how we can combine in order to defeat Eurasians. When you look at Christianity, it's really a pan-Eurasian spiritual system that they have. You understand? So it has some Germanic practices in there. It has some this, it has some that. It pulls this from the Book of Coming Forth by Day, got that. So it's really a potpourri. So they're saying we're going to use the strength of all of us combined in order to fight African people. So the question becomes, when do we use the collective strength of all of us as Africans, both on the continent and the diaspora, to combat our Eurasian enemies? Let's go to Dr. Maulana, so I'll come to you here and there.
I don't want to get too far off. When you brought up Amos Wilson, you know, I'm of the firm belief that our problem begins with the individual. Within us, genetically, we have a dominant gene, and the black man and black woman have a recessive gene. The dominant gene and the recessive gene. And what I am saying, that this little voice that you hear, you know what is right, but you have something that says, no, don't do the right thing. You do that. You know, and it's like a jihad that you're trying to conquer. Now, I say that to say, when we go back into the antiquities of Kemet, or even before Kemet, the laws of Mayat, why did those laws come? Those laws came because it was known by the spiritual ancestors that that recessive gene is inside of you. And the only way that you can conquer it, you have to follow the laws. And if you break the laws, there are consequences. So I am saying, if we're talking about dewhitenizing, that's why I mentioned a moment ago, let us not just, color is a factor. Blackness is definite. But even before there is blackness, there is spiritual. We are spiritual people. Amongst the black people, we got some spiritual people that has a very low, I don't want to use the word satanic, like you say, I go into the Western realms, but we got some evil thinking people. And we got some good thinking people. But there are laws that put us in the balance. And if you deviate from those laws, you are feeding the evil to come out. And if you keep deviating and deviating from those particular laws of Maya, eventually that spirit will manifest itself into the physical and come out. And in my opinion, this is how we get this Aryan white race. We are responsible to a great degree of bringing that thing out by us breaking the laws of Maya. Because you have to question, you have to answer the question. Why was there a need to have laws in the first place? And you ascribe to that. Maya is the relevant laws of antiquity. They govern our behavior, knowing that man and woman is subject to deviate off the path. And that is why the ancestors had enlightened us with these laws to keep us on the right path. And there was a conditionality behind those laws. They say, if you follow the laws, you will have the bliss of heaven. If you break the laws, you will have the abyss of hell on your shoulders. And I am saying, if we look today and we want to resurrect our people, this is what we're talking about. Let's take back the black man and black woman that has been taken away from us. But I think we have to be aware of the fact that laws must be instituted to govern our behavior, and that we're going to always have that recessive gene inside of us. You're not going to get rid of it. I think it was innately put there by the Creator. But it doesn't mean that that recessive gene should be able to overpower the righteousness of us as a people in following the laws. But if you do not follow the laws, Doc, the consequences are, hell. And I'm saying it is the laws of Maya that enable us to achieve the gigantic things that our forebears did. And once we begin to deviate and not follow those laws, we gave impotence and power to that recessive gene. And the more that we deviate from those laws, that recessive gene began to grow. And eventually it will manifest itself into the physicalization of a wholesome being, which is what we see ruling the world today. It is the lower side of man. Man has two natures. He has the upper nature that the Greeks call saloon bonum, the highest good, meaning that you are thinking about the best things that are there, if you will, in the heavens. But you also have a lower nature. And that lower nature is always there with you. And it's always trying to dig in. But that's why the laws of Ma'at are there. If you are following the laws of Ma'at, the lower nature is neutralized. It can do nothing. It's not going to disappear. It's there. But as soon as you deviate from those laws, you feed and give impotence to the lower nature. So to land my point, I'm saying this. I believe that we are responsible to a great degree of the problems that we are suffering from today. And if we look in our society today, just start in Ghana. We have a higher nature that's trying to do good, and we have a lower nature. The same nature that brought down Kemet, the same lower nature that brought down ancient Canaan, Israel, the same lower nature that brought down old Ghana, the same lower nature that brought down old Mali and Songhai, that negative activity spiritually amongst us, we have it happening here today.
Okay, thank you. I think we have people who haven't spoken yet, so let's go to the ones who haven't spoken, and then we'll come back. Yeah.
Okay, first, let me introduce myself. My name is Tijan Job, and I'm from Mali. And the point I want to stress on is especially music, because it has been a very important aspect of my life. And then since I was a boy, let me refer to my story. I used to listen to music all the time, especially local music. But at a certain point, I started listening to all these foreign music such as rap and all the rest, all the above. So after that, after some times, I've just realized that I was that kind of happy boy by that time, but after some times, I became this kind of outcast guy who just think that the whole society is against me. So one day, I was in my bathroom and I just looked at myself in the mirror, and then the way I was dressed and then the type of I was having, I just thought that wasn't myself. And I tried to realize what went wrong to the way that I arrived to that state of mind and the state of the bias. So I decided to find a way to go against that. And the first thing, I went to some study about what has been the changing factor that has led me to this type of behavior. And I realized that music has a lot of things to do with that. First, the type of music I used to listen to, they portray some kind of behavior and not decent activity and stuff. Yeah. And then unconsciously, on a conscious level, I thought that, oh, okay, I'll never do that. But unconsciously, my mind was recording all these things, and then at some point, I started reproducing them.
That's what it's there for. That's why they put it on you. Go ahead.
Yeah. So since we are stressing on the spirit guy inside, so you tend to do things that you know is not adequate or you shouldn't do them, but you just have to do them. So based on that, I just started cutting on the type of music I used to listen, and then I went back to the old ones. And fortunately, I've seen the result. And now I can just stand and see some of my friends still in that state. Lost. Yeah. I can't call them lost because I'm still in the process. In order to achieve that spiritual awakeness, I had to cut out on some things. And I can't say for sure that I've cut in on all of them, because there are some music still, when I listen to it, it brings back memories and stuff. So, but I can say for 80% that I've dropped them and I don't really listen to them anymore. But when I see some people, I'll just think that, oh, how are they going to do it? Because I can just consider myself being fortunate that just some idea popped up in my head and I just started doing things right. So now by that, as I say, I stopped listening to all those music and I see changes. So now the second point is that how I told myself how I'm going to tell people that what they are doing or what they are listening to is causing them to do all these things.
because naturally, if you try to tell them what they are doing is wrong, it will go against that nature which they like. So there are some stuff, if they listen to music, there are something they like to do. And then you telling them to stop doing that implies that they will have to stop doing those things that spirit likes. So they will definitely go against you by saying that, what are you trying to say? Or they will come up with things that you were doing, so you are trying to be a hypocrite or something like that. So I thought that the environment is the most critical thing, because as I'm seeing in Mali, for instance, lots of my friends, they are just in this rap stuff and things, and then the kind of behavior that is following them is quite disappointing. You see, and plus that, in our society, when I was young, not very long ago, we used to see some type of instrument in our society, and then some type of music which inspire you to do things. But now what you hear in the songs are just merely things that we all know. See, so I talked to a friend of mine about my perspective on changing about all this lifestyle. See, and it has resulted in me finding the right sorry for my English, I'm from a French speaker, so I'm trying to find the right word. But I just saw myself, the solution for that is definitely to stop listening to all these foreign songs, and then for all the emission and shows, and then all the musical activity they are having, it should be more pertaining our society, not the ones that has nothing to do with here. And then some of the first impact I'm seeing personally is that people are taking the behaviors of the Western and the foreign. That does not really apply here, and they are deviating from what they are supposed to do. And in the long run, they don't even know that they become self-destructive. That's the thing. So really, if something can be done on the music thing, I think it will bring about a big change in our society. Because you know that music, it will affect the body. Yeah, there are some type of music, if you listen to them, it will increase your level of adrenaline. And I've seen some people, after listening to music, they became so violent that people have to just stop it. And on a spiritual level too, there are so many bad aspects, depending on the music you listen to. So that's my point.
Something very brief to what he said. I think Malian music is very inspirational. I listen to a lot of Malian music. Wakia Tore, Salif Keita, Shimano, Omu Sangare, and all that. So can you share with us some, if they are not these people, some specific names so that we can some of the light transforming
music that you
listen to?
Yeah, except the Salif Keita, we have this guy, you know,
Alifaka, too many
Yeah.
You may know most of the people. We'll come here and then
For those who don't know me, I'm Dr. Dewhitenizing, and I'd like to, begin by thanking Dr. Kambon for bringing this conversation to the table. It's a very necessary conversation, and it's a journey, both individual and collective. And it's a process. You know, all of us are going through our own process with ReAfrikanization and dewhitenization. And it really comes to a matter of consciousness, developing African consciousness. And some of us have been on the path for a long time. And I think in my own journey, I think I was like born with African consciousness, because the name, none of us choose our name. And Dr. Kambon keeps referring to African people who have European names, that if you say their name, you won't know they're African. And your name is a part of your identity, a very, very important part of your identity. And it's spiritual. It's part of your spirituality. And in Kemet, they knew it was such, and they actually they actually, in dividing the aspects of the being, they understood the name being a part of the personality, and they called it the ren, to name a thing. Is very important. So even though none of us choose our own names, once we become conscious of who we are, we can change our name. And that was one of the first things that I did, was change my name. I never was that person that they gave me on my birth certificate. I was never that person. I never was connected to that name, and I was never ever called that name. And I went through so many name changes, and that's a part of African spirituality as well. As you grow in your being and your processes in life, you get more names and titles and things like that. So, but one of the things spiritually I think is so very important, is critical even in developing your African consciousness, is reclaiming your African name. And I think that's the point. And particularly, I'm saying that it's global. What has affected us, oftentimes we think that it's just where we are in our little niche in the world. But Africans we're all having the same problems globally. Wherever you find African people, you find us facing the same problem. And most of us were given European names, and we're still carrying those names. So it's a vibration, it's a science to naming, and word sound power. And African names have high vibratory power. And there's a connection between you and the name. So one of the reasons that we are not rising on the levels that we need to, in the numbers of us as African people globally, is because we're still hanging on to European names. So I did that one. And I would really encourage, it's a principle, it's an African principle that I live by, that every African should carry an African name. And once you do that,
I think that move was both ReAfrikanization and Dewhitenization at the exact same time, and oftentimes it works like that.
My name is Bonisa, and I'm very privileged. I think personally, like they say we are free, yet we still bear their names. Personally, that is what I've done, as she just said. I used to be porridge light, even though on most of my documents I still have it. But I decided to embrace my African name, which is G1, which means wholeheartedly. So henceforth, that is what I use. And secondly, too, I pray to my ancestors. Many a time we say, oh, Africans are not religious people, we are spiritual people. It doesn't mean being empty. We still connect with the Creator. So I pray to my ancestors. Every morning when I wake up, I call libation, I call on my past ancestors who are gone. My grandfathers, my mom as well. I think it's very,
a little bit about the name again. African names, all of them have meaning. And they connect us again spiritually to so many things. But the most important thing is to our landmass. It's kind of like identity. When you say a person in Germany says their name, you know they're from Germany, Chinese, same way, Indian, same way. So in Africa, when we say our name, we know that we are from the continent. And so then we're also taking these so-called Christian names, which don't really have any meaning for us. And then all we do is we connect it to the Bible. So then we see ourselves, we're tied to the Bible through the name. So again, it's of primary importance to begin that journey. And it's a bold move. You have to be courageous to do that, because like your parents gave you that name. And so you have to go through that thing, how can I change my name, something I didn't name myself? How can I do that? But you have the right to do that, is what I want to say. And I think we need to, particularly on the continent, be more conscious of taking back.
I agree with that, Dr. Z. What I would add to that, Ming, if I could say quickly, there's a duality to it, and especially I think speaking from an African, as an African from America, there are a lot of us in America as Africans that change our clothes and we change our name and we still act like hell on earth. And we haven't changed our spirit. It's kind of like what Dr. Milana said. A lot of people still respond to that recessive gene versus your higher order gene, which is African. And so I would just say I agree with the name, but I also think that you have to be conscious of the symbolism of it. Because sometimes we say, oh, we're African, but you're not living it spiritually. And so it's important, like my African name is Ajua, and so that symbolizes being a peacemaker, and so I try to live that. And so it's important that you know what the meaning behind things and that you're trying to walk, you're walking the walk and not just talking it. And that makes the difference. I agree with you, Dr. Z.
And we have people who are online who have some comments. And I think that both of these points, that once you change your name, that doesn't mean that you're done. But the whole point of this is to get all of your different selves together. So if a person is making a change in that area, that's a positive change in terms of ReAfrikanization and Dewhitenization. I see Maganio B.I. Logan. Do you want to say it or should I read it out for you? Can you speak? Maganio, can you hear us? I can read it for you. He says, how can me and my loved ones become more confident that we can be allowed repatriation from our people who appear to embrace other culture over us, i.e. the Chinese? I battle internally with the thought that I may not be allowed to reconnect to my spiritual origins. I think it's talking about acceptance on the continent as an African of the diaspora, when oftentimes we tend to be here accepting others. Another comment from the same was knowing our history, accepting our history, and being accountable is key. However, we must be solution-oriented with humility from those that are already on the road. We are preaching to the choir and must share successful solutions as you initiated. I think we kind of got off the topic of everyone saying what we did to re-Africanize and de-whitenize. I think we're back on that topic now. Okay, so those seem to be more comments in terms of continental Africans being accepting. Does anyone want to speak to that briefly? In terms of continental Africans being accepting of Africans of the diaspora, he said, how can me and my loved ones become more confident that we can be allowed repatriation from our people who appear to embrace other cultures over us?
I hope that I can speak to that. What I'm about to say, I think it goes back to dewhitenization, is what you're talking about, ReAfrikanization. The issue is this, and I think it pertains to the question the brother just asked. You see, it is this Jesus image. Do you understand what I'm saying? Don't take this lightly. If we want to talk about the African problem, and you're talking about dewhitenization, let us walk out of here with a commitment today. On a scale from 0 to 100, 100% of our problem, I would say 90% of our problem is this Jesus image. You understand what I'm saying? Now, by virtue of that, it answers the young man's question. The governance in Africa today is being managed by the white Christ image. Basically, it's a Christian or Christianon. In other words, religion is just not a religion. When you become a Christian or a Muslim, you have to reacculturate yourself. You never seen Mary Williams in the mosque leading the prayer. If her name is not Muhammad, you understand what I'm saying, etc. And you never seen in a Christian church on the pew, let's say
a black pope.
Yeah, Ahmed Muhammad leading a Christian prayer in a Christian church. It just doesn't happen. So what I'm saying is, the white Christ image has permeated our lives in every respect. Is that we see by looking at that white Christ image that all white people are akin to Christ. So we give undue respect to all white people because no one wants to insult Christ. And so if this man is a white Christ image and you see a white, you see, and so that comes down to immigration. Those Africans who want to repatriate here and do not get the favoritism or the preferential treatment that they deserve, because nobody asked to be taken to America. We were kidnapped and taken over there. And you would think that you would have the same passionate mindset of governance here to realize that. But, quote, that white Christ image is not just a religion. It is a part of culture. So our system of governance has acculturated itself to Rome. And you know what they said about when Daniel saw the 4 beasts. He couldn't, well, you don't know? Oh, well, I know.
Please don't tell me. I don't want to know. Whenever I say that, people start telling me stuff out of the Bible, and I don't want to know.
I'm not trying
no,
to
go ahead.
Because I know where you stand on that. But I mean, just for explanatory reasons here, that there were 4 beasts. No, let me say, let's be.
This is the thing. I'm being slightly melodramatic, but part of the thing is that for those who haven't been initiated into whiteness to that level.
Let me say this because it brings ultimate condemnation on Rome. What I'm saying is, in the spiritual realms, this beast, Rome, is a part of Western government today. All Western governments are following the system of Rome. And according to the one who saw this in the spiritual realms, let's just say, look, I don't even want to call his name. This particular man said that beast was so horrific, so evil, that he was likened unto no other beast. You couldn't even describe him. So what you're talking about, the white Christ image today is reflecting the seat of power from Rome. And therefore, it has instilled in the minds of all black people that you have to follow the Roman paradigm of governance. And so, if the brother wants to get his loved one and him coming from the diaspora, this is what he has to deal with in immigration. The immigration officer has no sympathy over the fact that you were kidnapped and spent 400 years in bondage. He is a Christian, and he's looking at the books of the white Christian perspective that has no room for sympathy of what happened to the black person. Because by virtue of the white Christians themselves, they were the ones that manifested this evil order. So my whole point is this. If on a scale from 0 to 100, and I do believe it even could be higher than 90%, if that is 90% of our problem, the white Christ image, then we are in big trouble. And what we need to do is to make a firm commitment that we can make that commitment today to dewhitenize ourselves, is to say that I will no longer give reverence and respect to the white Christ image, because I know it is abominable. It is abomination when you know that the origin of this precept of religion came from Oset, Asai, and Heru. You understand what I'm saying? The Trinity came out of Nubia. And the gods would tell you that Nu is water, and Be is child. And we are the children, if you will, of the waters. And that was in the beginning. Ageneshishi. The Genesis began with the black race. Well, you can pronounce it better than I can say it again. You see, and so these are things that our people have overlooked. And I think that what we can do is make a commitment. There are so many things that are diverse, Dr. Kambon, that we can't dewhitenize everything. Yeah. But I'm just putting on the table, what we can do is stop worshiping this mutant Christ is
Is anyone willing to do that who is still worshiping imaginary white people? Yeah, I think most people here have already done that. But let's do this. We have about 10 minutes. What I would like for everyone to do is pick up your list and say one thing that you will dewhitenize, one thing you will reAfrikanize. I don't want lectures. Just give me one thing you will dewhitenize, one thing you will reAfrikanize, starting from Dr. Maulana. Very good. Good.
But I have a contribution to make, you know.
Okay, once we're done with this, we'll come to your contribution, please.
Yeah, consumption of my local foods.
You still want to preach on white Christ?
No, I don't praise white.
Okay, thank you.
I
Because we have to patronize African print and then education as well.
Beautiful. Excellent.
I never voted for any political party.
I will read from African historians and I'll stop reading from European historians.
Good, excellent. I think we have. We'll come to you.
I tried to stop supporting stores like Max Mart and Malcolm and go towards African products.
I came here the other month and we started learning. I realized that, yeah, I'm a true African, so I went to Facebook and I joined ReAfrikanization. So we have been coming together discussing on Africa. Since then I realized that no, that white image is nonsense for me to be
I'm going to repatriate my tongue. I'm going to learn to speak French.
Yeah, I to dewhitenize, I decided to minimize or stop even limiting my time to media and social activities that do not empower mental liberation.
I will promote local goods, especially when it comes to food, organic food. That's what I would say.
Excellent.
I would want to marry a black woman.
Please don't. We didn't hear it. We couldn't hear it.
I would want to marry a black woman.
And divorce the white woman.
I would be whitenized by following my African religion and stop following the European religion.
Excellent. That's yours, Dr. Mark. Me already said the things I'm going to do. I'm going to get them African draws and more African prints. Good.
Yeah, I don't want to live in any European or American country. I just want to stay on the African continent. That's my.
Like that. Yeah.
Yes. Re-Africanize, use African products, live in Africa, de-whitenize, study African history, such as my art, as opposed to history.
I will de-whitenize by trying to wear more African prints and African clothing.
I will always be in an African Revolution organization. I will always be
I will continue to learn more about African, indigenous African culture, and my son's name is Katipiro. I had the choice of letting him be born in Babylon, and he was born here, not for any papers or anything like that. So I think we should just name our children our local names and live and make it in Africa.
Secretary, do you have anything you want to de-whitenize or re-Africanize? Not yet.
No, but you need a language that you can understand. You need a language that you can understand.
But I didn't know about it. I didn't know what was the sound of
I have to deal with my name first. I'm using this mic from your friend today. Feeling that most of this children are South African.
Okay, mine started with self-identity. I needed to find myself, and I'm still on course. So research more about Africa, research more about it, and knowledge myself more about it. And secondly, food and clothing. That's where I'm working towards.
Before I had hair, relaxed hair, so I cut it all off and started growing my hair.
I repatriated, and by January 1st of next year, I will only wear African clothes.
My name is Kusi Maui, African.
dewhitenize. I stopped attending the Catholic Church more than 30 years. And I still teach my own class for 3 days. So still Africa.
I want to share my experience with the house for the past years, since this is the topic that we are treating today. When I started to know myself, I began to be a member of Pan-African Youth Organization, which I was the founder in my place. I began to open my African culture, art and culture shop, which I have still running for now. Because what I realized is when you become an African, people outside, they begin to watch you, that why did you remain? But if you are not changing, people will gradually be following you. So I think the socialization aspect, when we begin individually. In every black holiday, like the day of Marcus Garvey, Malcolm X and all that, we show video publicly to the people. Last time we showed Good Tom, and people begin to be part of it. And on the 23rd July, which was the birthday of His Imperial Majesty, we brought full sovereignty Ghana from Accra. We voted, we demonstrated in the whole place against GMO. And now I think they're in the process of start to farm organic through the colonization or dewhitenization of the mind. And also, every black holiday, we still show public educational movies to the people by telling them that they will know who they are today. So I think it's taking a lot of, and now we start to even work with the chiefs of our area. Because when I was a Christian, I thought even my chief palace was a pagan house or something. I refused to go there. But now I begin to understand well that they were our authority. Now because the colonial system is too corrupted and things like that. And also I realized that our system now is running from the order of my heart. Because right now, if, for example, an MP should go to the village and swear to an issue before going to the parliament, I don't think they will be able to even get a penny out of the money. So I think that the struggle now is not mainly for the African community, but it's the changing of the whole human race. Fantastic. So when this is changed, I think the whole human race will change. So we need to return to something they call Melchizedek order, which will not be a man-made direction or order of the world, but must be from the order that created himself and put. I think that will be our solution. We need to start to do that.
Thank you very much. So, thank you very much. I think everyone has gotten your charts of warrior ancestors. This is your assignment for next month, and I will be collecting these assignments, right? So this isn't an idle thing. If you come without your assignment, I will close the door. I have the key to this room. I want you to populate your chart with warrior ancestors, people in the area of psychological, cultural, economic, education, health, physical, spirituality, social, political. I want you to also populate your chart with current Africans who you know, either you know personally or you know through their writings, through their speeches, who are on the path in all of those areas as well, right? This is what you should do. Also, reAfrikanize. This should be one of the most populated sections of the chart. All the things that you are going to do. You saw, even when we're trying to focus on what are you going to do, people still want to say what everyone else should do is, you see, this is something that is obviously very difficult because anytime you try to do it, that little white person inside of you says, no, stop. So this is something I want you to populate this chart very thoroughly of what you will reAfrikanize and start doing, what you will dewhitenize and stop doing. And then I want you to understand what white world terror, domination, and deceit does to us on every day in each one of these areas. What is happening to you psychologically? And why is that? Why do you like what you like? One time when I first came to Ghana, I would ask people, well, why do you wear this? They say, oh, I just like it. And it was the most confounding thing to me that this person has never thought about why they like what they like. They didn't think, oh, because of an advertisement, because someone else did. They just thought, I just like it. That you need to analyze why you think what you think and who gave it to you, who originates it and who benefits from it. Follow the money trail. If you know who originates it, then you know. You have to find out how they benefit from it. If you know someone benefits from it, you have to see where it originally came from. Those things. Also, so that's in every area on white world terror, domination. Also, even more than the laws of Ma'at, what I would like people to work on is the principles of Ma'at. A lot of the laws of Ma'at are very specific to Kemet, like not stealing the cattle of the Netcher. We don't even have that much cattle here. You know, not cursing the Nesut, the ruler of Kemet. You know, a lot of the laws don't necessarily fit here, but the principles, I think, if we can look at truth, justice, order, righteousness, propriety, balance, harmony, reciprocity, if we can work on how those can apply to our everyday lives, then that would be something that's even more apropos than the 42, even though I think it's very good to know the 42. Also in Nguzo Saba, our sister Kala, who's sitting there, is organizing Kwanzaa here at the Institute of African Studies on the 26th. So try to make it, it'll be an all-day event here, upstairs, and for the children will be downstairs. That's in Nguzo Saba. That's Umoja, Kujichagulia, Ujima, Ujamaa, Nia, Kuumba, Imani. I think I said everything. And then also work on every single day. You should be filling up this list of rules for yourself. No one knows whether you're adhering to your rules. Nobody knows if you are deviating from your rules but you. So you have to answer to yourself. The ball is in your court for total African liberation. If all of you do these things, then the whole race is on point. But if we keep saying, well, when everybody else does it, and then we still go into Max, Martin, Malcolm, what's going to happen? So the trajectory that we mentioned here is stop Max Mark. That's what I like to hear. So rules, never do and always do. That should be populated as well. Yeah.
Is it possible to email us a PDF of the chart?
Yeah, I could do that. Actually, let me consult with my father because I think he is working on putting it out in another form. So this is all him.
Okay.
So I'm just explaining it on his behalf. But once I do that, I don't have a problem with it. But I have to make sure he doesn't have a problem with it. Yeah. So I think everybody's kind of worked out the chart. So the main thing is getting it here. Warrior Grandcestors. That's people. So again, when we talk about how do we want to do, we need actual people who lived it. So whether it's Kwame Nkrumah for you, Kwame Ture for you, Amani Renas for you, whoever it is for you, who was on point economically, and how are you going to emulate that person? Who was on point in terms of health and physical? How do you emulate that person? Who is on point socially? Social, right? How do you emulate that person? Politically, how do you emulate that person? That's the warrior Grandcestors, current Africans. Who's on point now, who's on the scene? And maybe me, I'm on point. All right, I'm doing it. In this area, whatever it is, who's on the scene now who you think is really making it happen in these areas? Things to re-Africanize, things to dewhitenize, then things that white world terror domination is doing. Are they using capitalism? Are they using socialism? Are they using communism? What is white world terror domination? What's the flavor of the day that they're using to dominate the world? Because they'll switch from Christianity to atheism in a heartbeat. You understand? As long as they make sure that they are dominating, they don't marry any of those things. So these are things to keep in point. What is our propriety to make sure that we are doing? What are those principles that are guiding us?
Okay, I have a question.
Yeah. Yes.
My question is, as an African who try to share such an idea of the whitenization of our mind and things, how can we collaboratively or collectively work together to benefit other people too as well? That's my question. What criteria can we use in coming more together, or in how can we share ideas together so that we can easily have identify people who have shared the same idea? Because what I realize in African societies, as long as you mention something African, you'll be left alone. Nobody will even want to support you in your society.
This is to come to your point directly, and because we're running out of time, I want to really address it quickly. That there's, and then Kala, there's a concept Kwame Ture used to talk about in terms of unity of thought and unity of action. And the idea is that sometimes you don't have unity of thought. This person may be a Rasta, this person may be a Muslim, this person may be whatever they think, traditionalist. But you can find specific things that you are all willing to come together on. So it may be fighting against GMO. You understand? So just on the degree to which you all can come together in terms of unity of action to fight against the GMO, that may be the degree to which you can do it. Also, in terms of unity of thought, you may find other people who are thinking similarly, and now you say, let's come together to do those things. For me, I don't agree with every single person on every single point, but as long as I can find people who are close enough, they're in the ballpark, then at least we can have a mutually beneficial thing and say, all right, we're willing to homeschool our children together, we're willing to do this event together. So I think just those points of unity, the intersections that we have, will come to Moses, Kala, Dr. Maulana, and close out. Okay.
So what I wanted to say was,
even the question that the young man just put forth, Doc, great what you have done. But I think, Moses, we're going to have to take charge, because what we have to do here is the whole blueprint that we're trying to establish. Now, I said that at the outset, that it's not cast in stone yet, but the blueprint that we're trying to establish, taking into consideration that we will have different speakers every month, but we are trying to build a ministry of the future and to address Ghana, Africa's problems. And so, like you're talking about, people of the like mind as yourself, in whatever specificity that you want to get into, you're supposed to be able to find those people here at this meeting. So let us, I know it's in the embryonic stages, I put emphasis on that, Moses, but let's keep that in mind, because Kwesi Pratt is due to come in on the 27th. Now, Kwesi Pratt will come in with a portfolio of ideas, ideologically. Now, everything that we have started today, what do? Do we jettison that aside? We got to find a way to keep this streamlined. You understand? So, Moses, the onus is on you, but I'm here to help.
Yes. First, for me, I wish we applaud Dr. Kambon for all that he has taken us through today. Obviously, after we'll be taking a group photo, so I want to remind each of us, as Dr. Molana mentioned, in our next month edition, we'll be hosting Mr. Kwesi Pratt, and from the direction that we are going, we'll be dealing with how we can have control of our resources. Because in our first meeting, it was one of the items we mentioned that we are focused on having an African-centered education, having control of our resources, and also bridging the inseparable gap between religion and culture. So Mr. Kwesi Pratt will speak to that. And I observed that having Dr. Molana and Dr. Kambon here helped a lot with this particular class, in helping us to follow up from where we left off last month. So I'm hoping in the subsequent month, the resource persons with Dr. Begley and Dr. Samori will also be available to help with the discussion. And he will focus his discussion on how we can control our resources. But last meeting, after meeting Dr. Molana, it was necessary that we find a means by which we can package whatever that we get here to the outside world. And he advised a monthly newsletter or a magazine which, as a ministry of the future, we can put together so that we can release it monthly or bi-monthly on the university campus and other campuses or in communities, so that people will benefit from what we are doing here. And the challenge is that having an editorial board to facilitate this, that is the challenge. So we request of you to submit yourself as members of the editorial board, so that whatever that goes on here, at least we can have persons who put a newsletter or a magazine together, so that in the future we can make representation to government or to whoever that this exercise can support.
Moses, if I can just come in with a submission. As you said, first of all, yes, I want you to give another round of applause for Dr. Kambon, please. You can do nothing without money. You're talking about starting a newsletter. Let us put our commitment on the table right now. I am asking humbly for the sake of the coordinator here, Moses. Moses is not gainfully employed. He's having to do all of this coordinating. You understand what I'm saying? We're talking about at the same time trying to get a newsletter to go on. So we should take it upon ourselves at this time, if you talk about dewhitenizing, let's moneyize and put some money on the table. Sure. You understand what I mean? And make a donation for the organization so we can get this going forward. I'll give my first one, brother. Their mind is here. Let's make a donation toward putting the news letter together. Let all of us, it doesn't matter what you have. If you have 50 pessoas, put it on the table. If you got 10 pessoas, put it on the table. But if we can't do nothing, we get up here, we talk, and at the end of it, we go away and we clap for Jesus. And nothing else. I'm telling you.
Please, Dr. Malone, you have to stop cursing. Carla had a point. Carla.
No, I was going to ask a question about the charts.
Okay, go ahead.
And I don't know if maybe you answered it already, but on the chart, can you show the chart?
And we also had people saying what they would do to dewhitenize online.
The letters and numbers that you mentioned, there was a significance to them. I just wanted to understand.
Yeah, the letters and numbers is for quick access so that we could even have a code for ourselves. So if somebody says red 1, that you'll know that this is warrior ancestors in the era, psychological and emotional. If somebody says reAfrikanize A, now you're talking about psychological. reAfrikanize B, that's culture. So all of them are set so that as soon as somebody says it, you'll know exactly what it is. All right, so that was the point of that. And just real quick, somebody online mentioned what they would do to reAfrikanize. They said they will refresh their tree. This person took a course but did not use it, and dewhitenize limit to the eradication of Euro-American media. So that was good. Other people said it was good other than technical issues, good info and concepts. They want to actually get a copy of the chart. Others said they're hoping to discover their true identity. So all those are good points as well. So we also want to give a round of applause to the people who came online. We had a nice crowd at one point, so we had 8 or 9 total.
Yeah, Dr. Kambon, I'd like to make another
request.
Moses, one of the deficits that he has in trying to administratively keep this thing going, his laptop is spoiled. And I wanted to make a humble request. Is there anyone in the house that has a laptop or one that you can access to help him with? He needs a laptop typewriter because he's carrying a lot of records, you know what I mean, and he's handling the coordination of this, and his computer's down. So is there anyone in the house that may have an old laptop that you're not using that you can loan to the organization where they can use? If so, would you please converse with Moses, okay? That's my humble request.
Please. Yeah. Let's come here and then over the top.
Yeah, my brother here mentioned something about how do we find people out there or other brothers like us who share the same ideology. And I wanted to say something, but I don't know if it's on board or it's out of board. My point was social media. I think it's a very great tool, although it's much of a Western subject. But I think we need it right now to be able to reach people. I don't know what other brothers think about it, or there is any other powerful tool other than that we can use. Because I found myself through social media. And I found some pages there that I joined, and they gave me a lot of information. And it interested me more to find more, and it was in social media. Yeah. Trust me, without social media, it would be hard. Perhaps I wouldn't know there is something like this going on. So I'm wondering, other brothers somewhere who have access to social media, but won't have access to this, how do we find them? How do they get on board?
This is what I would recommend. Abibi Tumi Casa. Write down abibitumikasa.com. ABIBI. TUMI.
ADI.
BI.
TUMI.
KASA.
.com.
And what that is a form. It's actually what's up here now. And it's a forum that has over 6,000 members, over 1 million users over the course. And it has it in various sections. It has an African Liberation Institute, African Language Institute, and it's only African people allowed, unlike social media, which also has algorithms that program to send you to other things that are anti-African. It makes sure that a post that is something about African liberation, goes to the bottom of the feed, blah, 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 because it was created by the CIA to see what you're doing and also to put you in other directions. Bibi Tumi Casa is my own site. I founded it in 2006. Again, it's exclusively African. Before you can sign up, you have to say that you're African or you are black. That's one of the things that we do. There are as I mentioned, 6,000 people Africans post on the site is set up along the lines of language, and then also in every area of activity, similar to how the Kanban DOM is set up. So if you have information on culture, economics, education, events, global African presence, health, history, math and science, military, and in terms of posts, there are over 100,000 threads, 143,000 posts, 6,000 members, 173 members active at any point in time. So this is how you can de-whitenize your, this is what I call people who only use this white social media as virtual house Negroes. That in part of your de-whitenization, you don't want to be a virtual slave. You want to re-Afrikanize even in terms of what you're doing online. So that may be, again, your trajectory, not your position. You may want to wean yourself off of supporting your enemies in what you do online and start supporting African people, because we sure could use that support. And then also you can interact with Africans throughout the world. Go ahead.
Another one is a fight a public one or it's a secret fight? Is if the whites, the West know about our fight, is it a threat to us? Or it's not a threat? Do they have to know about our fight or our cause?
I think that there are different levels to that as well. You wanted to speak to it?
Okay, you go ahead.
Yeah, I would say I think that there are different levels to it. If you look at different revolutionary organizations, oftentimes they would have an above-ground party, and then they would have an underground liberation organization. And I think it really depends on what the content of what you're doing at any specific point in time that would dictate what you need to do. In the U.S., I was part of a group that wasn't very public, but then I was part of other groups that were very public. The ones that weren't very public were doing things that didn't need to be very public. The ones that were very public were doing things that needed to be very public. So I think that depending on what the content of what you're trying to do is, I have one of my students at AUCC, she put out a documentary that myself and Dr. Maulana were on, and she was worried. She said, oh, I want to do this work. She has a new show that she wants to come on with. She said, I want to do this work, but I don't want to end up like Patrice Lumumba. It's a very real thing that she's talking about. So again, being very wise and being very judicious of what needs to be public. This one, Bibi Tumikasa, is not public. That you can see one post. After that, you have to be registered to the site before you can view anything else, and that's intentional. In addition to that, there's also an app that you can download to your African-owned phone if you have that, and you can, do it on the go, post images, pictures, videos, all that as well. So these are, again, if you are doing anything on Facebook, you know that that's the CIA NSA.
My last one.
Okay.
My last one is much about the young upcoming ones, like our children and the next generation coming. Right now with us, with this generation, let's say much of us are having a lot of dilemmas about who we are, or so confused about who we are, we're still trying to find ourselves. But we shouldn't let it affect the new generation coming. They should be able to be wised up the moment they come up, so that they don't get back in. So if we die out, but they will have the truth. So perhaps we might not be able to win the fight with this generation, but they should win. So they should win that fight. So those coming, they are the future. We might not be able to win this fight. We might get up to a percentage, but not maybe a bigger percentage worldwide. But they should win the fight someday.
I think there's an African proverb that goes similar to that we who are living today are the custodians of the land of our children who are due to come, who own the land. So I think what you're talking about, it depends on what we do. You understand what I'm saying? Yeah.
And I think also with the Kanban, I'll come to Colin and then come to you. I think also with the Kanban down, the idea is doing as much as you can. Oftentimes in the U.S., especially, people like to talk about how intergenerational the fight is. And sometimes that's just what the reality of the situation is. Other times it's an excuse for apathy. Say, oh, well, I can't do that. You could do that. Well, oh, I can't do that, so therefore the next generation is going to do it. They'll deal with the name issue. And that's something that you could deal with yourself. So I think that also with this idea, you know that it's something that needs to be passed on. But also you need to take it as far as you could possibly take it. And there was a discussion on a Bibi Tumikasa about, do we honor our ancestors more by standing where they stood or going in the direction that they pointed us to? Right? They cut the path and they took it as far as they could take it. Now we say, oh, well, now I'm standing just where they stood. They said do this, therefore I'm saying I'm a Negro, just like them. Well, okay, they took it as far as they could take it, but then they said we want to go even further, right? Kala, and then here, and
Okay. This is more of a request and also letting people know about some things that are happening in the context of this whole discussion of ReAfrikanization and Dewhitenization. As Obadele mentioned, there will be a Kwanzaa event happening on the 26th of December here at the Institute of African Studies. And I'm requesting that everyone not just come, I would like you to come, but also need help with getting it together still. So if anybody's interested in doing it, and for those who don't understand or may not understand what Kwanzaa is about, it is a celebration of African history, culture, and for me, us moving forward in the things we need to do to re-Africanize. So it's not just a day to get together and celebrate, but a day to also organize ourselves so we can do other things to move ourselves forward. And it's also in terms of the spiritual spiritual issues we are talking about, it allows us a day to get together that's not Christianized around that time of the year. It's a day for us to recognize our African ancestry.
I was suggesting
So
that if you want to list for her.
Yeah.
A volunteers list.
If we can get a list of people who want to volunteer, that would be very good.
And it's very much focused on the youth. There's a lot of things for the youth. So one of the things that we're doing with the youth is we're doing a contest where if you know any children who can participate, we're doing a contest where you can recite an Anansi story and the chance to get 50 Ghana CDs.
It's not only children, it's anyone. And it's also, we strongly encourage African languages.
Right, in an African language, if possible. So it's to get into the idea of this African storytelling and African culture in that sense. Also online, there's another contest going on around the Black economic empowerment, and this one is with a website that we've just launched called Let's Buy Black 365, and it's another way to re-Africanize. The idea is that especially in the United States right now, we're seeing a lot of issues around the police brutality and that kind of thing, and this is a way to economically show that our black dollars matter, and stop supporting these big corporations that are actually financing our death, financing our imprisonment by knowing where we can go to support black companies. So this website offers a place you can go to buy black 365 days of the year. You can put in shoes, type the word shoes, and a whole bunch of black-owned shoe companies will come up that you can support. And so to generate interest in the youth involvement with this, we're doing a poetry slam online contest, and the winner can get up to $500 US. This is for adults and children, and the theme has to be on Black economic empowerment for the poem. No longer than 3 minutes. You have to do a video and you upload it onto this site, which is where Obadele is showing online. And if you click on online poetry slam, you'll see more of the details. The judge, I don't know if everyone knows Professor Griff from Public Enemy. He's one of the judges. So I encourage people here. It says national, but it is international. So if you know any youth or you yourself want to participate, we encourage everyone to participate with that. That's also happening. And there's a third thing, and my mind is drawing a blank. But that's it. I just wanted to let people know all of these things that are going on, and I hope you all can. I will see you on December 26th. Thank you.
Yeah, let's go ahead. And on my part, I think that what my brother raised is very important. Social media is the largest platform where people interact, and I think we need to make good use of it. There is an intellectual warfare going on social media, especially on Facebook, where people throw out issues in their mind and leave it out there to find answers to. So some of these things, it is important that we involve ourselves confront the daily challenges that goes through the minds of so many young people. There are a lot of platforms that goes on. And I think that one of the things we can also do is that we need to first join an organization. Because Nkrumah himself said that every revolution is a program. And a program is developed by an organization. An organization can develop a program where its members can infiltrate into reactionary organizations to raise the contradictions that exist in them, to correct the anomalies that exist in them. Most of the things that will be discussed there, there are a lot of young people who raise these issues on social media, especially on Facebook, but they don't have the answers to them. So the more we equip ourselves here, the more we'll be able to resolve those issues on those platforms. So I would encourage members to first be in an organization. I would encourage members to join a social media platform, to prepare to join the debate and raise the issue, because the intellectual warfare is very key in winning the overall battle against capitalism.
Malcolm X, I'm paraphrasing, but Malcolm X said a quote that I think is relevant to what these two brothers said. He said something like, don't be too quick to judge somebody else for what they don't know, because at one point you didn't know. And so I say that all to say the revolution in each of us is going to be different. Like, for example, I respect Brother Obadele. I'm on Facebook. So what I share on Facebook is relevant for the people that I'm on Facebook with, but at the same time, I respect this brother for saying, no, I'm going to do it this way. So I think that each of us has to be patient with the other one and realize that our stages of being a revolutionary is going to be different, and that's okay. And so people in this room are, maybe at a certain level of critical consciousness, but if we're trying to reach all people, there are going to have to be multiple ways that we reach them.
What I also want to add little is that just as you in the West, they will come with a different idea up front, but within the society or the group, we know what exactly we are after. So I think some ideas which are not offensive to the public, we can have it, but what is private to us, when we share it privately. So I think we shouldn't be afraid of the social media, but there are some things which we have to keep from there, and when we come in our individual way, and we share some secrets, but we keep out going on that. Because it's always hypocrisy going on that. So we put things on there, but when we come within ourselves, we know that certain issues don't have to go out, but it's within ourselves, individuals, African people. I think we can come back.
I'll put in on this subject as well. I would recommend people not use social media. I know you won't stop doing it, but it needs to be said. I would recommend that you not use social media and that you patronize African sites. That way, if you're saying that you want to be free, you're actually living that out through what you are doing, as opposed to saying, I want to be free, and then I'm supporting all these white-owned sites while I'm letting the black sites die. That's the reason why social media exists, is to control the revolution, to make sure that they see the channels. So what I would recommend very strongly is not using Facebook, not using all of these white social media sites, and to use African sites. Otherwise, they will die. Yes?
With time, we have software builders, we have creators, we have inventors and whatsoever. I think with time, we can also create something alike that's like a black social media or something, and I know people will join.
They already exist, but people are telling other people to use Facebook instead, even when they already exist. You understand? So again, what I would highly recommend is don't use social media. You're not going to do it, I know. But I want to create space for someone to say don't support white people and say you are about African liberation. That is my point. All right, so thank you everyone. Good session. Yeah, I want to discuss my thoughts. That's what I got. Yes, very
So you know about it. Yes, I do. Yes, we thank you all for
making today's meeting possible. Your donation amount is 190, which is very encouraging. Which is very encouraging. More importantly, we want volunteers for the editorial board.
Before you end that, I think that it's very encouraging that we practice donation, but ideally we should build our own economic base, our own collective economic base, which will be sustainable. Because at the point in time, we will be doing mass production, and donations cannot sustain on useless. We need to go into real production as a group.
That we put out and the solutions for you to be this brother here has done a lot of work and it's not, but you're not a open statement to the effect of
So we announced on the social, we have the media accounts. Some of them have not been able to put their documents together, so we are giving them a week more, so that we collect all the documents.
So yes, I'll be over there. I'll let you know.
Since yours is ready, but we still saying that we need members for the editorial for people who can come together and help ourselves put together a maximum, a monthly or a bi-monthly manner. And please, so please, volunteers, Dr. Kambon, if I'm allowed to nominate to be our editor-in-chief, but you need us to work with me so that we collect materials.
Dr. Kambon just became editor-in-chief for Ghana Journal of Linguistics. So I take on another journal and I also do a newsletter for Institute of African Studies. So it may be a bit much to take on another newsletter.
See, as you can hear, Dr. Kambon, he has a lot on his table, but we still believe he's the best for the job. But if he has editorial members, I'm looking for him to work with us and still get money. From regards, I'm adding you as a member.
Oh, no. You guys can. No, how you to start
And please, there is a social media platform for the Ministry of the Future. Those of you who have supplied your contacts, we are going to add you to WhatsApp. Once again, we thank you all. And our next meeting is on the 27th of December. And our resource person will be Mr. Secrets. Thank you. Wow. Yes. Please, we like stand for group photograph.
Group photograph, nobody goes out.
The last time we had one here, can we meet please, we go outside for a group photograph.
And this is talking about getting yourselves together. Imagine I'm telling you get on Facebook and I'm on Facebook.
So you know I'm not gonna miss it. You know I'm not going to. Unless my lady disappears. But I'll send you some suggestions too. Yeah, for your meeting. Okay. Better do
Please, can we have a group photograph?
Are you what I say?
What I just said, Eurasian DNA has components of African DNA. Yeah, I can.
Alright. You just
yeah, the one that I mentioned about
I'll forward it to you.
and African people have Eurasian DNA inside.
Hey, how's it going?
It came out as an article and it was from a scientist. It's based on
love your place.
The children are
Group picture.
Dr. Kambon.
Dr. Kambon. So you are done, you come out to a good
And I have a website too,
Right, that's the thing.
Yeah. So yeah, hit me up.
Also have a group, a youthful group in
Shabaka, I think, is up there. Shabaka.
Yeah, I went to
That's my brother.
Black Madonna, you know Black Madonna? She's here with me a lot. She organizes programs about wellness and fitness.
Please, can we get water for?
Yes, hold on a second.
We're out of here.
I'm safe. That's it. Yep, that's it.
Hello, hello. I'm gonna bring a